Hey, David Brewster here with another episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Testament. And of course, we're going to be talking about 80s thrash and metal. And this is Metal Month, in October. And Testament's a very respected and popular band, and they kind of blew up, in the late 80s, continued through the 90s, and they've actually had a resurgence, in recent years too. And it does seem like, Alex Skolnick kind of has soaked up, most of the Testament, spotlight. Everybody knows Alex, and I love Alex. Skolnick's a very exciting guitarist, extremely talented, and a head full of theory. He has all these crazy shred elements and jazzy ideas. He does really cool things with arpeggios and legato too. He does a bunch of cool legato stuff. But the other half of the Testament picture, a lot of people don't really notice the other guitarists in Testament, because Alex is kind of shining like the sun, and then it's like, oh, there's another guy, and Eric Peterson. And Eric actually is the original long-standing member of Testament. Drummers have changed, guitarists have changed. Alex left the group for a while, and James Murphy was in Testament briefly, and then Alex came back, but they've changed singers, drummers, bass players. But Eric Peterson has been a constant member that has never left the group. Honestly, The New Order, I think, is my favorite Testament album, and I love them all. Practice What You Preach, and Souls of Black, and I mean, there's so many great albums. The Ritual, but The New Order, I don't know, it just hits me differently than all the other Testament albums, and it has this kind of atmospheric sound. There's a couple instrumental tracks, which we're going to talk about those briefly in this lesson. And if you're a huge Testament fan, maybe you're looking for like some of the later stuff, like when James Murphy was in the band, the Low album and some of that stuff. And I love that stuff. But when I started putting this lesson together, and I started going back and I kind of revisited the New Order and some of the early music, I just got stuck in that New Order era where it's like, man, this is really going to be hard for me to move beyond this. So if you like this lesson, I'm really just going to hit like one song off the first album, and then, some other music from the New Order. And that's as far as we're going to go. So if you like Testament, you like Skolnick, you like Peterson, let me know. Leave some feedback and comments, and I definitely can make more, Testament chordplay videos. And so with the opening riff, that was Over the Wall from The Legacy in 1987. And it definitely has that signature thrash sound, that album for sure. But that song especially the kind of thrash wrist, picking with those power chords after that opening riff. But as far as the riff itself, we're basically kind of bouncing off the low E string, and we're also, I guess we're kind of flirting with like a Phrygian, tonality technically. Because we're basically playing with this. So there you can see we're bouncing off that low E string, but we're grabbing D, E, and F, and that's signaling Phrygian. And then he starts doing kind of a sequence there. And the last time through it, and then right there is when it goes into that crazy kind of thrash power chord riff. So the opening there, and then we're going to be basically doing this E flat to E power chord, and then there's 3 low E's played very fast, open, and then E slid up to F, and then F back to E, and then E to E flat. So slowly. Kind of ends with that stacked E over B power chord, and then an E flat 5 over B flat. But I love that riff, and that just screaming, you know, classic thrash metal. The next example comes from the song The New Order, the title track from the album The New Order. And this is kind of flirting more with Phrygian dominant now, so it's related to what we just looked at, but it's a little bit different. And I really like this because it starts off with octaves, and then you hear this little kind of single note, you know, Phrygian dominant kind of melodic, you know, kind of a hammer-on pull-off move. And he does it, you know, in a higher octave, and then he drops it an octave lower. Then they change the octaves to power chords, and they do the lower option and then an even lower option with that little single note part, which is really cool. So right there you can see we're doing octaves. And that can definitely, you can hear Lamb of God obviously was influenced by Testament, because you can hear those kind of little fills and runs in a lot of Lamb of God's music. But here it is in this classic, you know, Testament riff. And you're going to do the octaves again. And then do that little single note fill down here. So after you run through both of those parts, then change the octaves to power chords. So now E5 to F5 to E5 to E flat 5. Do the lower kind of melodic fill, and then do the power chords again. And the last time you're going to move all the way down to the low E string, and you're going to mimic this. But you're going to do it right here. And that's a big stretch too, so that might be kind of a challenge to get up there. Really cool riff though, I love that. And one of the things I really like about Testament at that time, like the early albums, is, you know, Alex, you know, obviously was the lead guitarist, and Eric was more or less the rhythm guitarist. So Eric would create these chordal, you know, kind of dreamscapes and these kind of tonalities, and then Alex would just kind of float around on top and play solos and leads. And they did that a lot on this album. There's a lot of atmosphere and this kind of dreamy, haunting, you know, sound that lingers throughout The New Order. And the next song, this is from Hypnosis. And Hypnosis, actually Eric's doing this tapped kind of arpeggio, but it's implying chords. And that's basically functioning as C major 7. But instead of doing it, you know, something like that, he's tapping it. And then after he runs through that, he moves everything down a whole step, so now it's a B flat major 7. And it's awesome, it's haunting. It sounds like, you know, it's from a John Carpenter movie or something. You know, it has that very horror, you know, kind of sonic soundscape. next example, this is from Disciples of the Watch, and I really like this song too. So Eric's actually playing a series of minor add 9 chords. And, you know, a minor add 9, it starts with A minor add 9, technically. But the full chord would look like that. And we've talked about those chords, you know, in Chordplay episodes before, and you can move that around. But really what Eric did is he took the most haunting part of the chord, the root, the ninth, and the minor third. So he's really just kind of targeting those 3 notes. He's not really worried about the 5th right there, that E note. And then he just starts picking through it. And you're going to take that A minor add 9 and then move up to a C minor add 9. And then move down to a G minor add 9. And then a B flat minor add 9. You know, it sounds like it's straight out of a horror movie. And then, of course, Alex starts doing that. What's the last one? You put all that together and it has this really just surreal, kind of haunted feeling. You know, like when you hear it, it's like, oh my gosh. You know, it's the last example here. This is the last song on the New Order, and this is Musical Death, a dirge. And Musical Death, it has a very distinct, you know, classical guitar or classical kind of tonality, where we're moving between, you know, A minor and technically E major. So we're kind of flirting with, you know, A harmonic minor, basically. So he's kind of picking through it like this. And you can see there we're just kind of arpeggiating through A minor and then E major, technically. And it's technically like E7 because he's grabbing, you know, the low E string open, there's G sharp, and then that D right there. So it's definitely flirting with an E7 tonality. And he kind of almost does this little kind of abrupt little strum before he goes back into A minor. He kind of changes the flow a little bit, but I like it. And then right here, you know, he's kind of grabbing like a different piece of E7. And then right here, he's going to move all the way up to D minor, technically. And then there's the flat 5 right there. And he's kind of signaling this diminished move right here. Right? And that's going to start way up there with the B diminished to A flat diminished, and then F diminished to D diminished, and then A minor, little piece of E, and then A minor. And like I was talking about earlier, you know, Eric plays that, and then Alex comes in and just starts soloing over the top of it. and it's really cool. This is an instrumental song too. Um, but then eventually, after they kind of run through that pattern and Alex, is playing over the top of that progression, then it changes suddenly, and then you've got this really spooky, kind of reminds me of like Megadeth and that Mission Impossible kind of spy, sound and stuff. And that kind of stuff. But I really like those chords. That's a D minor add 9. And then you're going to add a B flat right there. And that's going to change it to a B flat sharp 11. There we go. And then you're going to change that to a B. And that's going to change it to a B diminished add 11. But a really spooky, series of chords, and I love that progression. It's really cool. And I'm a big fan. I love Alex Skolnick, and I love all that interplay between Eric Peterson and Alex Skolnick. And I love the other eras of the band too, so don't get me wrong. I do love their other albums. But for whatever reason, the New Order, it just hits me, and it's like, man, that's the one for me. Now, you might be different. You might like Low, or maybe you like Root of All Evil, or something, more recent. But the New Order just rocks. Like, when I hear it, it's like, yeah, turn that up. It's awesome. And you've got thrash elements. You've got this melodic guitar stuff. You've got all this eerie kind of 2-guitar interplay going on, some classical themes, really cool. All right, so leave some feedback and some comments, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more lessons and material very soon. Thank you.